Hello, this is a video about paths forward. It's some substantive advice on how to be open-minded, and this video is my account of some ideas proposed by Elliot Temple. There's a link in the description so that you can read what he wrote yourself in case I've got anything wrong. So, the problem this video addresses is the following. It's common for people to say that you ought to be open-minded. You should be willing to change your mind in the face of arguments against your position. But you have limited time, so you have to prioritise. There's not much substantive advice on how to do this without missing something relevant, an argument that should change your mind. To the extent that there is any advice, there is a sort of standard approach, which is you ignore anyone with low social status or people who have ideas very different from the norm or anything that seems off topic. The substance of this idea is that if the idea or person you're considering was any good, it would already be understood and everyone would love it. There are some problems with this. A person may have a low social status because he has a different idea that people dislike, and the idea need not be wrong. In addition, the standard idea is judged inexplicitly and might not even be stated. And every good idea starts as a minority idea, so rejecting ideas different from the norm means rejecting all ideas that are better than the norm. And finally, your ideas about what is on topic are a result of your current conception of a topic, so you may be wrong about what's on topic. Some specific examples. People often say stuff like, everybody knows X, if you criticise some idea X. Okay, if that's true, then there should be answers to objections to X, since so many people have been working on understanding it. And there should be no problem with replying to the criticisms of X. The next thing people say is scientists say X, or some other kind of expert. Well, scientific knowledge is created by conjecture and criticism. So there should be answers to criticisms of a scientific idea. If there is no such answer, then the idea should be reconsidered, and the result may be scientific progress, either in understanding the current idea or in replacing it. What's the alternative to the standard approach? Well, you can conduct a discussion so that there's always a way to make progress, a path forward. For every idea you advocate, you should have arguments you're willing to defend. Those arguments may be written by you or by somebody else. In either case, you should take responsibility for that content and should either defend it or change your position in the light of criticism. Otherwise, progress is impossible. If you're not willing to defend an argument that you put forward, then you're basically throwing something at the other person in the hope that he'll shut up. You're not leaving open the possibility that you might be wrong and you could make progress by a critical discussion. Now, there should be a publicly accessible record of the argument you made. This record should preferably be written, and since written material is easier to search and quote. The argument should explain the content of the idea you're arguing about. The context of the idea you're arguing about. For example, an epistemology answer would explain the most popular position, inductivism, and what's wrong with it. I have videos about what's wrong with inductivism that I link in the description. Now, When you make an argument, you should make the most general point that will address an issue. The reason is that if a general point is true, then it's more useful. If it's false, there's a wider range of potential criticisms, so you can find out you're wrong more easily. Vagueness is bad. For example, saying that induction creates knowledge without explaining how to do induction is no good. What are some potential problems that people might have with doing paths forward? Somebody might say, sounds kind of boring. I know more than everyone else, so I don't have to do this stuff. Alright, if that's true, then you have an opportunity to learn how to explain stuff better. If you're wrong, then you might find it a mistake while discussing, so you should still be doing it. What if somebody picks an issue out of context? Okay, then explain the context. For example, if a person raises an issue answered later in your discussion, point to the location of the answer. Silence in response to criticism is bad. It leaves no way to make progress. If you're too busy to write down an answer, then use an answer written by somebody else. Is there no other written answer? Okay, fine. If your ideas are so great, you should be able to recruit others to come up with an answer from your point of view. For example, an email discussion group. If you can't do either of those things, then just don't claim to have an answer to that issue. What if you're content? Your life is wonderful. Everything seems to be going swimmingly. Why would you need to change your ideas at all? Well, being mistaken about how good your life is extremely common. About half of marriages end in divorce, but couples don't start out thinking they'll divorce. Something goes wrong somewhere along the way. So even if you're content, there can be a potential problem lurking under the surface that you haven't noticed. Another example is if you're a Republican, i.e. a member of the Republican Party in the US, then lots of people disagree with you. And the same is true for Democrats. So at a bare minimum, you're mistaken about how to change other people's minds about the political issues you're interested in. So again, you should be doing paths forward to learn how to explain stuff better. You might think, well, my life isn't that great, but my problems really can't be fixed. Sometimes bad stuff happens, it's inevitable, you can't avoid it. Now, if you had made some bad mistake and solved the problem, seems kind of unlikely you'd be saying this. So this is actually a confession that you're making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. You should be interested in looking for better ideas, even more than you are now. You shouldn't be less interested in looking for good ideas. Bad stuff happening to you is not inevitable. The laws of physics don't mandate that your life should suck. Whether it sucks depends on what you do. But what if somebody I'm having a discussion with is malicious? He just does stuff. Just says stuff to annoy me. That's all there is to it. There are some people like that. But in every case where you think that somebody is being malicious, you could be wrong. A person can interpret a criticism as malicious when, in fact, it's just pointing out that there is some flaw in your ideas, and for some reason, you find having that flaw pointed out hurtful. One way to deal with this is explain why you think the person you're having the discussion with is malicious and see what he says. He might have an explanation that will satisfy you, or he might go out of his way to hurt you again, in which case you know he's malicious and you don't have to continue the discussion with him. So, in conclusion, being open to criticism requires putting a substantive thought into how you approach discussion. You should aim to make it easy for people to find out what ideas you hold on a topic you want to discuss and to criticise them. You should have records of your positions written by you or somebody else that you're willing to defend. Goodbye.